Good morning. Do you remember what we spoke about last week? Power of tongues, yes. Yes, speaking in tongues, changing your emotional state. Ken, I need some help with this. Yes, it edifies us, refreshes us. It is not necessary for us to understand what we are speaking in tongues because usually our mind demands to know, demands to understand, but it is not necessary for your mind to know everything. Yes? We need to learn to put the wind and the word to work in our lives. The wind from our mouth, the words we say. We need to learn to put the word, the scriptures to work in our life. Yeah? Let's read John chapter 14, verse 16. He will give you another helper that he may abide with you forever. John chapter 14 to 16 talks about how Jesus talks about his going away. He says, "It is good for you that I go away, for if I do not go away, the helper cannot come. But when I go away, the helper will come. And the helper who comes will abide in you forever." And John chapter 16, verse 17 says, "It is to your advantage that I go away. If I do not go away, the helper will not come." Very often when that's John 16, 17. "It is to your advantage that I go away." I think it's the Message version. "If I do not go away, the helper will not come." Very often when we are faced with difficult situations, we say, "Lord, I want to see you. It's okay even if you don't speak to me. I just want to see you. I just want to know that you are there. I just want to find you and cry." But you know what Jesus said? "It is good that I go away." It is good. And if Jesus said it is good, then it is good. It is good. And he says, "It is to your advantage that I go away." So he wanted to give us an advantage. And he said, "The helper will come and he will abide with you forever." Let's read Acts chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. Today we are going to be reading a lot of verses. And I want you to pray that the verses will come alive to you. We're just going to be reading the scriptures. We're going to be reading the verses. And we're going to be reading them again and again. Okay, and as we read, I pray that the words will become life to you. Let's read Acts 2, verses 2 and 3. "And suddenly there came a sound." Can we all read together? "And suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. Then there appeared to them divided tongues, as of fire, and one sat upon each of them." Can you imagine that the same disciples who were so afraid, you see Peter there who has denied Jesus 3 times, and then you see the other disciples who got scattered and were all over, who ran away at the Garden of Gethsemane. You see them all being made bold and strong after the day of Pentecost. After the outpouring of the Spirit, after the coming of the Holy Spirit, you see that they are made strong, they are made bold looks like their personalities have changed. Looks like their personalities have changed. I don't know how you view yourself, whether you think of yourself to be a timid person, a shy person, or a not so outgoing, or an introvert, or whatever. When the Holy Spirit comes upon you, He changes your personality. He makes you brave. He makes you bold. He makes you confident. And He affects everything about you. He changes the way you carry yourself. He changes your perspectives of life. He changes everything. The disciples were there with Jesus thinking that, okay, He's talking about kingdom. He's talking about, he says He's the king. So probably very soon He's going to be the king and we're going to be with Him and we probably will be in important positions. That was all they were dreaming. And then Jesus begins to talk about His going away. And their hopes come crashing down. And then they see their Lord crucified. And they are so upset. And then they see His body go missing. They run to the tomb searching for the body. Can you imagine all that would have been running in their heads? All that was running in their head. And then Jesus appears to them again, and He says, I have risen. He says, I am with the body. He says, touch me and see me. Put your hand in my side and see. And so they're thinking, okay, Jesus is alive. He's come back. He's resurrected. And then He ascends. And just before that, He says, tarry in Jerusalem. Tarry in Jerusalem. And then this day of Pentecost comes. I think they would have been so amazed. Some of them wouldn't have been able to understand everything. Some of them, I think, were in a state of shock. But this day of the Pentecost, this outpouring of the Holy Spirit changed. It did something to them. They knew, okay, now this is the real deal. All that the years we stayed with Jesus, the things we left behind, our jobs or whatever, our hope is not in vain, is what they came to know when the outpouring of the Holy Spirit happened. And at that time, two things happened. It was the coming of the Holy Spirit, and at that time, the gift of tongues was given. The gift of tongues was saved for the day of Pentecost. The only gift that you don't find in the Old Testament, is the gift of tongues. The only gift that you don't find in the Old Testament is the gift of tongues. And so this tongues is the language of the recreated man. Okay, it is the language of the recreated man, of the regenerated spirit. It is the language of the regenerated spirit. It is the language of the new creation. So as a new creation, it is a language that is kept for us. It is a language that is uniquely kept for the new creation believers. And so when such a thing is there, why would we not use it? Why would we not be willing to use the gift that has been given? Yeah? Let's read 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 2. He who speaks in a tongue does not speak to men, but to God, and no one understands him. However, in the Spirit, he speaks mysteries. Okay, so here we see we are not talking to man. When we speak in tongues, we are not talking to man. And we are talking to God. And we are talking mysteries in the Spirit. Mysteries which the angels long to look into. We are talking mysteries in the Spirit. When we speak in the flesh, when we are in our mind and when we speak to our friends, we speak about the problems we have. We speak about how bad it is. We speak about how bad it can get. Or we tell how it cannot get any bad because it is so bad. Yeah. So when we use our mind, that's what we do. That's what we speak. But when we are speaking in tongues, we are speaking mysteries in our spirit. We are speaking unto God. And maybe if there is something you fear, and if in the natural you would say, I would never do that. Maybe when you're speaking in tongues, you're saying, I will do that, I will do that, I will go for it. I will go all out for it. And you don't know you're speaking that, but you are speaking according to the will of God. You are speaking according to what God has for you. So if you want to pray for yourself, if you want to pray for your spouse, the best way to pray is to pray speaking in tongues. Whenever you think of a problem, start speaking in tongues. Because in heaven, there is nothing called problem. In heaven, there is nothing called problem. Everything that we see as a problem here is seen as an opportunity for the manifestation of the power of God. There is no such thing as an issue or a matter or a problem in heaven. Everything that looks to you as an issue or a matter or a problem now, it can be in your marriage, it can be with your children, it can be at your workplace, it can be a math theorem that you are learning as school-going children or as college-going students. Whatever it is a time, it is an opportunity for the manifestation of the power of God. It is. So when we are speaking in tongues, there are tongues of men, there are tongues of angels. 1 Corinthians 13 verse 1 says, if I speak in the tongues of men and in the tongues of angels, but have not love. So there are tongues of men, there are tongues of angels, and the Bible also talks about unknown tongue. 1 Corinthians 14:2 says, he that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God. So there are different kinds of tongues. Speaking in tongues is a gift. And so if you're asking, should I really speak in tongues? Is it that necessary that I speak in tongues? You know what? You don't have to. You get to. You get to speak in tongues. It is our privilege to be speaking in tongues. It is our privilege to be speaking in tongues. You know, when someone gives you a gift, a very precious gift, you don't ask, should I be actually using this? Should I use this? You know, if someone gives you a beautiful diamond necklace, seeing it, you don't ask, should I really use this? Whoever asks that? Yeah? If someone gives you a fantastic BMW or whatever your favorite car is, you don't ask, should I really use it? Do we ask? No. We get to use it. We get to have it. And so it is with tongues. So it is speaking in tongues. And let's read Proverbs 3 verse 5 from the Message version. Proverbs 3 verse 5. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Can we read that together? Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Trust God. So when we are speaking in tongues, what are we doing? Rather than praying in a known language, when we are speaking in tongues, we are trusting God. We are learning to trust God from the bottom of our hearts and not trying to figure out everything on our own. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 4. He who speaks in a tongue edifies himself. The one who uses the private prayer language certainly gets a lot out of it. You develop intimacies with God in prayer. And I'm not sure which version this is. It says, cultivate God's presence in a mysterious prayer language. You cultivate God's presence in this mysterious prayer language. How can anyone cultivate God's presence? How can we cultivate God's presence? By becoming more and more aware of it, by paying more attention to His presence in you. Cultivate God's presence in this mysterious prayer language. Let's go to Mark chapter 11, verses from 17. It talks about Jesus cleansing the temple. Verse 15 to 19 talks about Jesus cleansing the temple. This record of Jesus cleansing the temple happens to be in all the 4 Gospels. Okay? So here it talks about Jesus cleansing the temple. Verse 17 says, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of thieves. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." John chapter 2, verse 13. Let's go to John chapter 2, verse 13. So from verse 13 to 22, again, it talks about Jesus cleansing the temple. It was the Passover of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip, he drove them all out. And verse 19 says, Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Then the Jews said, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. Jesus was cleaning the temple, but he was speaking of his body as the temple. And let's read 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. "Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own?" Go to the next verse. "For you were bought at a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." Jesus was cleansing the temple, and Jesus talks of his body as the temple. And here 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20 says, "Know ye not that you are the temple?" Jesus' body is the temple, and we are the body of Jesus, and we are the temple of God. And it says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer." We are supposed to be making this temple a house of prayer. Each of us is a temple of God, and we are supposed to be, this temple is supposed to be called the house of prayer for all nations. How, if you were to describe yourself in a sentence, how would you describe yourself? If you were given if you were to just give yourself a name or describe yourself, how would you describe yourself? Would you call yourself a teacher? Or would you call yourself someone who's come out a victor, having been through so many things? Are you going to call yourself a mom? You're going to call yourself an engineer? Or here it says, my house shall be known as a house of prayer. How about being known as a man of prayer, as a woman of prayer, a house of prayer for all nations? Shouldn't we be known as the house of prayer? Because that's what it says here. My Father's house is to be a house of prayer. When we do not make the temple of God a house of prayer, it will end up being a den of thieves. When we do not make this temple a house of prayer, it will end up being a den of thieves, where thieves come, kill, steal, and destroy. And guess what? We might begin to have sicknesses in our body, sicknesses in our mind, because we have not given importance to prayer, because we have not given importance to this gift that God has given. We have not heeded that this temple is supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. Let's go to the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles chapter 28. The last few verses of 2 Chronicles chapter 28 talks about an evil king called King Ahaz. And it says, King Ahaz, he was not faithful to God, and he shut up the doors of the temple. Okay? In the time of distress, King Ahaz became increasingly unfaithful to the Lord. And he began to sacrifice to the gods of Damascus. Because the gods of the kings of Assyria helped them, I will sacrifice to them that they may help me. But they were the ruin of him and all of Israel. Verse 24 says, So Ahaz shut up the doors of the house of the Lord and made for himself altars in every corner of Jerusalem. So how did King Ahaz treat, how did he handle the temple? He shut the doors. He shut the doors and he started sacrificing to other gods. And then after Ahaz, his son King Hezekiah comes, he became king. Hezekiah became king when he was, chapter 29, 2 Chronicles chapter 29. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old and reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father David had done. It doesn't talk about his father Ahaz. It talks about his father David. Yeah? And can you see that his mom's name is also mentioned? If you see the story of all the kings, you will find that when there is a good king, his mother's name is mentioned. It says his mother was so-and-so, and he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. If you see 2 Chronicles, just chapter 27, verse 1, it says his mother's name was Jerusha, and he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. So I want to tell something here. As moms, you have a great influence on your child. No matter what circumstances you are in, no matter what others are telling your child, no matter what he is being taught in school, you have an influence on your child. Irrespective of whether you have any support, whether you have support or you don't have support. you can make a difference as a mom. You can make a difference. You also see that one of the evil kings' mom's name is also mentioned in the Bible. Yeah? So, God has given this unique thing of being able to be a mother, being able to be a father. So, we need to be good stewards of it. We need to be good stewards. Yeah, and then we see chapter 29, verse 3. The first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. His father shut the doors, but King Hezekiah opened the doors. And then verse 7, they have also shut up the doors of the vestibule and put out the lamps and have not burned incense or offered burnt offerings in the holy place to the God of Israel. So King Hezekiah opened the doors and repaired them.